So Donald Trump stood in front of the world's most powerful business leaders and argued that we should seize territory from a NATO ally because, and I'm quoting here, how stupid were we to give it back after World War II? Not how strategic, not how necessary, but how stupid we were to honor our commitment to a democratic ally who fought and died alongside us in Afghanistan and Iraq. And he said this while threatening tariffs against 8 NATO countries, publishing private text messages from the French president, and bragging about weapons nobody ever heard of that supposedly disabled Russian and Chinese defense systems in Venezuela 2 weeks ago. So today, Trump delivered his big speech at the World Economic Forum in Davos, Switzerland, the annual gathering where billionaires and world leaders pretend to care about solving global problems. And instead of talking about housing affordability, which he said he was going to do, he spent a significant chunk of his speech making this extended case for why the United States needs to acquire Greenland from Denmark. Not through negotiation, not through some kind of partnership arrangement, but through what he's calling immediate negotiations, while refusing to rule out military force. And also actively threatening tariffs on 8 NATO allies if they don't support him. So, let's watch his speech, and I'll give you my breakdown later.
We want strong allies, not seriously weakened ones. We want Europe to be strong. Ultimately, these are matters of national security, and perhaps no current issue makes the situation more clear than what's currently going on with Greenland. Would you like me to say a few words of Greenland? I was going to leave it out of the speech, but I think I would have been reviewed very negatively. I have tremendous respect for both the people of Greenland and the people of Denmark, tremendous respect. But every NATO ally has an obligation to be able to defend their own territory. And the fact is, no nation or group of nations is in any position to be able to secure Greenland other than the United States. We're a great power, much greater than people even understand. I think they found that out 2 weeks ago in Venezuela. We saw this in World War II, when Denmark fell to Germany after just 6 hours of fighting and was totally unable to defend either itself or Greenland. So the United States was then compelled, we did it, we felt an obligation to do it, to send our own forces to hold the Greenland territory. And hold it we did, at great cost and expense. They didn't have a chance of getting on it, and they tried. Denmark knows that. We literally set up bases on Greenland for Denmark. We fought for Denmark. We weren't fighting for anyone else. We were fighting to save it for Denmark. Big, beautiful piece of ice. It's hard to call it land. It's a big piece of ice. But we saved Greenland and successfully prevented our enemies from gaining a foothold in our hemisphere. So we did it for ourselves also. And then after the war, which we won it big. Without us, right now you'd all be speaking German and a little Japanese, perhaps. After the war, we gave Greenland back to Denmark. How stupid were we to do that? But we did it. But we gave it back. But how ungrateful are they now? So now our country and the world face much greater risks than it did ever before because of missiles, because of nuclear, because of weapons of warfare that I can't even talk about. 2 weeks ago, they saw weapons that nobody ever heard of. They weren't able to fire one shot at us. They said, what happened? Everything was discombobulated. They said, we've got them in our sights. Press the trigger, and nothing happened. No anti-aircraft missiles went up. There was one that went up about 30 feet and crashed down right next to the people that sent it. They said, what the hell is going on? Those defensive systems were made by Russia and by China. So they're going to go back to the drawing boards, I guess. Greenland is a vast, almost entirely uninhabited and undeveloped territory. It's sitting undefended in a key strategic location between the United States, Russia, and China. That's exactly where it is, right smack in the middle. Wasn't important nearly when we gave it back. You know, when we gave it back, it wasn't the same as it is now. It's not important for any other reason, you know. Everyone talks about the minerals. There's so many places. There's no rare earth. No such thing as rare earth. There's rare processing, but there's so much rare earth. And to get to this rare earth, you got to go through hundreds of feet of ice. That's not the reason we need it. We need it for strategic national security and international security. This enormous unsecured island is actually part of North America, on the northern frontier of the Western Hemisphere. That's our territory. It is therefore a core national security interest of the United States of America. And in fact, it's been our policy for hundreds of years to prevent outside threats from entering our hemisphere. And we've done it very successfully. We've never been stronger than we are now. That's why American presidents have sought to purchase Greenland for nearly 2 centuries. You know, for 2 centuries they've been trying to do it. They should have kept it after World War II, but they had a different president. That's all right. People think differently. Much more necessary now than it was at that time, however. In 2019, Denmark said that they would spend over $200 million to strengthen Greenland's defenses. But as you know, they spent less than 1% of that amount. 1%. There's no sign of Denmark there. And I say that with great respect for Denmark, whose people I love, whose leaders are very good. It's the United States alone that can protect this giant mass of land, this giant piece of ice, develop it and improve it and make it so that it's good for Europe and safe for Europe and good for us. And that's the reason I'm seeking immediate negotiations to once again discuss the acquisition of Greenland by the United States, just as we have acquired many other territories throughout our history, as many of the European nations have. They've acquired. There's nothing wrong with it. Many of them. Some went in reverse, actually, if you look. Some had great, vast wealth, great, vast lands all over the world. They went in reverse. They're stuck back where they started. That happens too. But some grow. But this would not be a threat to NATO. This would greatly enhance the security of the entire alliance, the NATO alliance. The United States is treated very unfairly by NATO. I want to tell you that. And when you think about it, nobody can dispute it. We give so much and we get so little in return. And I've been a critic of NATO for many years. And yet I've done more to help NATO than any other president by far, than any other person. You wouldn't have NATO if I didn't get involved in my first term. The war with Ukraine is an example.
Okay, so if you're sitting there feeling like you just watched someone pitch a real estate deal at a national security conference, you're not wrong. You're not wrong to feel that way, because that is exactly what just happened. Let's start with what Trump got wrong, which is, honestly, basically everything. First, his claim that Denmark promised $200 million for Greenland's defense in 2019 and spent less than 1% of that amount. According to reporting from multiple outlets, including NPR and the Associated Press, Denmark did announce increased Arctic defense spending after Trump's first Greenland push in 2019, but Copenhagen hasn't really disputed that, yeah, implementation was slow. However, and this is the part Trump conveniently left out, in December 2024, right after Trump started threatening Greenland again, Denmark announced a $1.5 billion defense package for Greenland. Then, in January 2025, they announced another $2 billion package. Then in October 2025, they announced plans to spend $4.26 billion more on Arctic defense. According to Time magazine, by mid-January 2026, Denmark had committed over $13.7 billion, yes, billion with a B, to strengthen Arctic defense and had sent 200 additional soldiers to Greenland. So this idea that Denmark is defending Greenland with 2 dog sleds, as Trump likes to joke, I mean, come on. That's complete fiction. That's not a thing. Second, let's talk about the Venezuela incident. Trump referenced the one where he claimed the US used weapons nobody ever heard of that somehow disabled Russian and Chinese air defense systems. According to reporting from Breaking Defense and Army Technology, The January 3rd capture of Nicolas Maduro in Operation Absolute Resolve did involve extensive electronic warfare and cyber operations that suppressed Venezuela's Russian-made S-300 air defense systems. But here's what Trump didn't tell you, and this part matters. Those systems were already obsolete. They were poorly maintained. And according to multiple defense analysts, they were basically sitting out in the open without camouflage, without proper deployment, just there. The U.S. achieved air superiority using standard electronic warfare aircraft like EA-18G Growlers and F-35s with electronic warfare capabilities, not some magical new weapon. And analysts at the Modern War Institute noted that Venezuela's military appears to have had deep infiltration from CIA sources and possibly internal sabotage. So when Trump says the missiles crashed down right next to the people that sent it, he's either describing a system failure, friendly fire, or he's just making it up for dramatic effect. Which, wouldn't exactly be new. Third, and this is important, Trump claimed that China and Russia want Greenland, and there is not a thing that Denmark can do about it. But, according to the 1951 Defense of Greenland Agreement, which was amended in 2004, the U.S. already has full military access to Greenland. We already have Patuxent Space Base there, formerly Thule Air Base, with about 150 American troops. We already have the defense agreement. We already have the security arrangements. The Conversation reported that the United States already maintains a military presence on the island under a 1951 defense agreement that allows Washington to establish and expand bases with the consent of Danish, Greenlandic authorities. Denmark's Foreign Minister Lars Løkke Rasmussen said it explicitly. The U.S. has already wide military access to Greenland. So what's Trump actually doing here? He's threatening to break up NATO, the most successful military alliance in human history, over territory we already have access to, from an ally that has been spending billions to secure it, while 85% of Greenlanders tell pollsters they oppose U.S. control and only 6% want to join the United States, according to a January 2025 Varian poll. Denmark lost 44 soldiers in Afghanistan, the highest per capita death toll among coalition forces, and 8 more in Iraq, fighting alongside American troops. And Trump's response to that sacrifice is, what? Threaten them with tariffs, call them ungrateful, and suggest we might just take their territory by force. So, what does this mean? Well, let's start with the personal impact. If you're a member of the U.S. military, your commander-in-chief just spent his speech at Davos threatening military action against a NATO ally while markets tumbled and European leaders scrambled to respond. U.S. markets plummeted in the first trading session after Trump announced his Greenland tariff threats, with CNBC reporting it was the worst day in 3 months. And it's sort of like your boss announcing he's going to burn down the company headquarters for insurance money and you work on the 3rd floor, which is, just a completely insane thing to even have to say out loud. According to Reuters, Ipsos polling from January 12th through 13th, 66% of Americans believe U.S. efforts to acquire Greenland could hurt relations with NATO and European countries. And they're right. They're right. But here's the institutional impact. According to CBS News, Denmark's Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen, warned that any U.S. military action against Greenland would mean the end of NATO. Article 5 of the NATO Treaty, the Mutual Defense Clause, states that an attack on one member is an attack on all. So if the U.S. attacks Greenland, we are technically attacking Denmark, which would theoretically obligate all other NATO members to defend Denmark against us. And I know that sounds almost too stupid to be real, but that is literally what the treaty means. The entire foundation of Western security since 1949 would collapse. And why? For territory we already have access to, from an ally that's already securing it, to solve a problem that doesn't exist. And for what? Trump says it's about national security and keeping Russia and China out of the Arctic. But we already have security agreements covering this. He says it's about rare earth minerals, except he literally said in the speech, everyone talks about the minerals. There's no rare earth. No such thing as rare earth. There's rare processing, which is... what are we doing here? He says Denmark can't defend it, except Denmark has committed over $13 billion to Arctic defense in the past year. So what's the real reason? According to reporting from The Guardian and analysis from multiple commentators, Trump's Greenland obsession appears to have intensified after the Venezuela operation. He's emboldened by what he sees as a successful use of force. And as Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney warned at Davos, we're watching a shift toward autocracy, where conflict has become normalized. So where do things stand now? According to CNN and CNBC, Denmark, France, Germany, Norway, Sweden, and the UK have all sent personnel to Greenland for Operation Arctic Endurance. The EU has united against Trump's threats. In Congress, both Republican and Democratic senators have introduced the NATO Unity Protection Act to prohibit the use of Defense Department funds to annex or otherwise assert control over the sovereign territory of a NATO member state. Even Republican Speaker Mike Johnson called Trump's threats completely inappropriate. And here's what this isn't about. This isn't about whether Greenland is strategically important. It obviously is. This isn't about whether we should have a strong Arctic presence. We obviously should. This is about whether the President of the United States understands that you can't just threaten to invade democratic allies because you've decided you want their territory, call them ungrateful for fighting and dying alongside us, and expect the entire Western security architecture to just shrug and go, yeah, sure, take it. According to Ipsos polling from January 14th, only 17% of Americans approve of U.S. efforts to acquire Greenland, and 71% say using military force would be a bad idea, including 60% of Republicans. Trump stood in Davos and argued that giving Greenland back to Denmark after World War II was stupid. You know what's actually stupid? Threatening to destroy NATO, an alliance that has kept the peace for 75 years over territory you already have access to, while calling allies ungrateful, and proving to every autocrat on earth that might makes bass, right? Which I guess brings us full circle back to that whole how stupid were we question, doesn't it? Before you go, just real quick, if you enjoyed this content and you want to see more and support independent media, please subscribe to this channel. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for watching.